Welcome back to our summary study of the Brhad Bhagavatamrta. We are currently now in Volume 2, the Glories of Goloka. Now, we just finished Volume 1 where heard the story of Narada Muni's quest, who's the greatest recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy, that brought us to Dwarka, where it was revealed that the gopis, Krishna revealed that they are the greatest recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. And at the very end, Parikshit Maharaj tells his mother that she stresses to him that she worshiped Krishna in the mood of the gopis. So that's where we left off with that statement. Now, in this story, we have Gopa-kumara's search for the form of the Lord described in his 10-syllable mantra that he received. Gopa-kumara searches the earth, the upper planetary systems. He goes to Vaikuntha in searching for Krishna. Now, there are various forms of the Lord and various forms of worship that are prescribed for each form of the Lord. And there's a mantra given for each Lord. He's given the Madan Gopal mantra, the 10-syllable mantra to worship the Lord, Madan Gopal. In the beginning of the story, there's another devotee. It begins with a Mathura brahman who is also given this mantra, and the story begins with that. But in both cases, they feel dissatisfied because everywhere they went, the moods that they saw in the different types of worship didn't correspond with their mood of their worship. This volume ends with Gopa-kumara arriving and coming to Ayodhya and meets Lord Ram. And then volume 3 is when the Lord goes to Dwarka and continue his search. So we have chapter 1, which is called Vairagya, or renunciation. And now Parikshit Maharaj is speaking to his mother, and she is asking Parikshit Maharaj, her son, a question. He's just told her that you should worship the Lord in the mood of the gopis. Now she picks up here in volume 2 with a question. And so she sets the question up a little bit before she comes to it and asks it. Uttara says, by performing auspicious duties, householders with material desires can achieve 3 celestial worlds. And persons who have renounced their homes can reach the 4 worlds still beyond those. But when their enjoyment ends, all these persons must return to their mundane world, this earth. Only a select few of those who have reached the planets of Mahaloka and beyond are liberated along with Brahma. She says, it's like when you go to the heavenly planets, you can only go there for a certain amount of time, then you have to come back here. But if you're a brahmachari sannyasi, you're able to make it to the upper planetary system like Mahaloka, Jnanaloka, Tapaloka, where only brahmacharis are allowed. Then you can progress up to Brahmaloka. Now those who go, those pure devotees who actually get out and make it to Vaikuntha, she starts talking about there are different types of those, and she brings that point out here. Among the Supreme Lord's devotees, some are devotees attached to knowledge, and others are pure. Still, others are situated in love of God. Others are immersed in love of God, and yet others are painfully overwhelmed with God. So now we have 5 different types of bhaktis that are in Vaikuntha. Sanatana Goswami kind of breaks this down a little bit, and he kind of gives us some detail. about these different types of bhaktis. He says that even though without prema for the Lord, one cannot attain Vaikuntha, one should see the differences, since prema has different bhavas. So there are these 5 different bhavas that he points out. There are jnana bhaktis, sudha bhaktis, prema bhaktis, prema para bhaktis, and prema tara bhaktis. 5 different types. In Srimad Bhagavatam, all these stories, these 5 types are in there. An example of a jnana bhakti is Jad Brhad. An example of a sudha bhakti is Ambarish. A prema bhakti is Hanuman. A prema para bhakti are the Pandavas. And a prema Torah bhakti is Uddhava. So these 5 types of devotees. And Uttara continues on after describing 5 types of bhavas. She says, since the levels of these devotees are various, it seems unfitting that the results they achieve be the same. But in Vaikuntha, no hierarchy exists because everyone is equal in their love. Their love for the Lord is different. Some are worshiping Nrsingadev, some have bhav for Vamanadev, and so they're given a corresponding mantra to worship that particular deity in their sadhana, and they achieve that success. They go to the Lord of their heart. Now she says, of course, all the devotees in each distinct region of Vaikuntha are completely happy, for they have all achieved what their own specific natures they desire. They have all attained the ultimate limit of happiness, each in its own kind of ecstatic reciprocation with the Lord. And now she comes to her question. But what place is destined for the exceptional devotees of the performer of the rasa dance? So that is her question. Where do those devotees go? Where do they wind up? So they know Krishna's history, his story, that he came from Vrindavan and he came to Mathura. So she knows the back history. She wants, hearing the story in the previous volume 1 about who's the greatest recipient, wants to know, what is their destination? Where do they go? So that's the story that Gopa-kumara is going to tell. We'll find that out. And Parikshit immediately responds to her and he says, I prefer to clarify the subject for you by first relating a history I learned by the mercy of my guru, who was Sukadeva Goswami. He just heard the story. Okay? And he said, this narration will dispel your doubts. So now we have really what we have here is a story and a story. We have, beginning here, we'll have a story about a Mathura Brahman who gets the 10-syllable Gopal mantra from Durga. And he worships this mantra and he develops, and his sadhana increases, and he eventually comes to meet Gopa-kumara in Vrindavan, in a forest there. Now Gopa-kumara is sent there by Radharani to help this sadhaka in his practice, to help him to Vaikuntha. And then not just to Vaikuntha, to bring him to Vrindavan, to help this Mathura Brahman. The story begins with this. And then Gopa-kumara will tell him his own personal story, how he can relate with this person, and so therefore he'll be able to relate his own personal journey and how he also had this same mantra and how he searched out for the Lord of that mantra and how he was successful. And by doing so, help this person. So the story begins once upon a time, a long time ago, in the city of Pragjosta. There lived a poor Brahmin who was ignorant of the teachings of Scripture and was always hankering for wealth, typically a typical materialist. In a dream, he received the mantra from Durga, a 10-syllable mantra for worshiping the lotus feet of Madan Gopal. So he gave up his hankering for wealth, and he became satisfied by chanting this mantra. Eventually he left home and he traveled around to holy places. And he met Brahmins, yogis, jnanis. And then eventually he met some sannyasis. These sannyasis were Mayavadis. And in the course of this, meeting these individuals, he got a little confused. And he would chant his mantra in private, and sometimes he would be depressed and not knowing exactly what to do. He was actually thinking about taking sannyas. Is this something that I should do? So in a dream, Shiva came to him and said, don't take sannyas. Get out of there immediately and go to Mathura. On his way to Mathura, he came to Prayag. And at Prayag, he saw Vaishnavas who were having a great festival. And they were worshiping Vishnu. And he interrupted the kirtans of the Vaishnavas and he asked them, what ceremony is this are you observing? Whom are you worshiping? And some of them laughed at him and called him a fool and told him to be quiet, not interrupt their kirtan. Some of them were more compassionate to the fallen souls and said something to him. They said, initiated by our gurus, we always worship the Supreme Lord Vishnu with the mantra and methods that they have given us. So the Brahmin then asked, where does your Lord live? What is he like? What boons is he able to grant? And then eventually realized that the methods they were worshiping were not worship Madan Gopal. He continued on his journey. And so one day, while lamenting in this way, as he began to feel drowsy from fasting, he saw Lord Madhava, who consoled him and gave him some instructions. The Lord said, my dear Brahmin, please remember the words of Viveshvara, the husband of Uma. Go to the path along the shore of the Yamuna to Sri Vrindavan. So when he came to Mathura, he took a bath at Vishram Ghat and he wandered around that land. And at one place on the eastern side of Keshri Tirtha, he heard some crying. So he searched out and followed where that crying was come from. So heading in that direction, it was entered into a dark, dense forest near the Yamuna. There in the grove of Kadamba trees, he found a handsome young man with the dress and accoutrements of a cowherd boy. Mistaking this person for his worshipful deity, the Brahmin joyfully called out, "O Gopal!" and fell to the ground like a rod and offered respects. The cowherd stood up and came out of the grove and bowed down to the Brahmin and embraced him and made him sit down. To further gain the Brahmin's confidence, the cowherd pleased him with hospitality and then smiled and revealed something about the Brahmin's life. Gopa-kumara wants to make him feel comfortable. He has a purpose here. He wants to bring this person to Vrindavan. So he makes him feel comfortable, and then the Brahmin tells him his story, how he got this Gopal mantra, this 10-syllable mantra, and how his journey that brought him to where he was right now. Gopa-kumara says that he realizes, after hearing this Brahmin story, he comes to the conclusion that this person has done everything he needs to do. Indeed, his life is a complete success. He says that all that remains for him is to see directly the lotus feet of the Lord. He needs to become attached not to so much to the solitary chanting of the Lord's mantra, but the sankirtan of his names. So he needs to make that transition to the congregational chanting of the Lord. This is the loud chanting. So Gopa-kumara says, to bring him to this realization, I must first tell him my own history in full. That will clear away all his doubts. Now Gopa-kumara says that describing one's own glories is disapproved by spiritual authorities. But nothing else I could tell him will bring about his good fortune. It's recommended that we don't talk about ourselves. But here, Gopa-kumara has his disciple. And on the order of Radharani, he has to bring this disciple home, even though he knows he's almost there. He similarly had the same journey as this Mathura Brahman. So therefore, typically what would be the exception to the rule, he's going to tell him his story, his success story, how he also got the same 10-syllable mantra, and that he searched out the Lord of that mantra, and how that journey. He says here, he says that there are many historical accounts relevant to this topic about the process of devotional service. But I'm going to tell you my own story, including recollections of what occurred at times when I was bewildered by ecstasy and other distractions. By his own realizations, by his own experience, he's going to help this Mathura Brahman explain how he was successful in searching out the Lord of his mantra. So we'll begin the next video with the story of Gopa-kumara's journey. So thank you very much. I hope you come back. Hare Krishna.